better business, and a better life begin here. Welcome to Business is Art on TrueChat with author and business consultant, John Umstead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. We're going to be expanding on a topic that we really began several weeks ago, a few episodes ago, when Justin T. Weller sat in as the guest. And he's going to do it again today. Justin is co-founder at TrueChat. He is a fellow show host at TrueChat, and he is the producer of Business is Art. And now, once again, he is the guest on Business is Art. Welcome back to the show, Justin.
Always a pleasure to be here. Like I said before, I think this is something that we kind of hinted at, right, in a previous episode, and now we get to expand on it.
Yeah. So let's tell everyone what it is. So we're going to be talking about the contents of your pitch deck. Let's say you are going out and you're going to pitch your business or product idea to a potential investor. What all should be in your pitch deck? That's what we're going to cover in a little bit more detail than we have in the past today. But before we even get started, I would first like to invite you all to connect with me on social media, if you would, please. Join the discussion. We'd like to hear from you, hear what you think about today's episode, any past episodes, or any future episodes that you'd like to hear from us. So check me out at John Umstead on Twitter, or you can find me on LinkedIn rather easily. You can also go out to my website, plancanvas.net, where you can find out a little bit about my strategy execution management software, as well as my consulting services. And it really was around that strategy execution management software, Plan Canvas, that some of this stuff really crept up. Well, let me get to that in a second, Justin. But first, let's back up to where we were several weeks ago when you and I talked about how to know if your business or your product idea is a good one. So we covered about 10 major areas for you to think about, 10 major questions to answer. And each of those major questions had some sub questions. And this was really kind of proofing to yourself that you had a viable business. Part of that proof was answering the question, can I pitch it? Can I pitch this idea to someone? And we went into a few things that you should consider along those lines, but we didn't get into it in detail. So we're taking that particular question and expanding on it, drilling down. And really, it's my own experience that is driving this. To begin with, I mentioned, Plan Canvas. I hit a point where we bootstrapped Plan Canvas, developed it from scratch, out of our own pocket, sweat and time. And, it's reached a point where, it's a viable product for the initial target audience, which is that small business owner or startup, that's looking to get a little better digitally organized and put better plans together, articulate more what it is that they want, and lay the plan forward, track against it, make better decisions moving forward. Now, all of that sort of stuff. So that's what it was initially built for, but it was architected really to operate in a large enterprise environment. The challenge is that there's a considerable amount of enhancement work, functionality that has to be added to the software in order to make it minimally viable for a large enterprise customer. And so that then is where I began to turn to thinking about, it might be time to seek out an investor. Now, the challenge is, which I'll get into here as well as we're looking at these points. The challenge is timing. Timing is always a challenge with this kind of stuff. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but that's what's been putting this subject particularly on my mind and why I would like to share some things. And as you said, Justin, you've been through it a couple of times with TrueChat, so you've got some real experience to share as well.
I think it's a process that people have probably some different preconceived notions about, but like a lot of things, it almost never goes the way that you think it will. And I think a lot of people probably aren't that familiar with how you should approach it.
Yeah. And it's, I do think, I've been kind of around this environment for enough years to have a bit of an opinion that if you've pitched to one investor, potential investor, you've pitched to one potential investor. They're all different. It seems like they all ask a little bit different questions. They have different interests. So is there one size fits all sort of pitch deck that you can prepare? I think the answer is no.
Yeah, it's in the organizations and individuals that we approach, they kind of all, and that's the business they're in, right? They all kind of think they have their formula that works, what they're looking for. So knowing that you should hopefully do some research and be able to tailor each pitch deck and every pitch that you're making to the prospective investor, because they aren't all the same. They're almost, like you said, all different. There's some basic things I think they want to know that you have, but the extent to which they care about those things is going to differ quite a bit.
Yep. It goes back to know your audience. You got to know your audience. So, well, we've got a number of things listed here that could potentially be in your pitch deck, and I'm going to start with a warning. I have been to pitch schools, if you will, training. I have done a couple of amateurish pitches, pitch competitions. Those tend to be, hey, you got 5 slides, or you got 5 minutes or less, or you got even 2 minutes, to do your pitch. That's not a real pitch.
No.
So I don't want anyone thinking that, hey, I've done that. I know, I know how to do this. That's not a real pitch. If you are really pitching to an investor, maybe you've watched Shark Tank. That's not a real pitch. Even
wait, John, wait a minute. You're telling me that Shark Tank isn't the real deal?
Well, there's real deals that come out of it, and there are real millionaires that are made from it. But
that's not the way that most people do it.
That's not the way most people do it. And what you see is just a microcosm of what actually goes on. I think you maybe see maybe 5 minutes of in an episode of any particular entrepreneur's pitch, or a 2-minute pitch, or whatever. That initial pitch that they come out and do, and they always make it showy, that's entertainment value. You wouldn't do that in front of a room full of potential investors out in the real world. But you would do some sort of elevator pitch that kind of opens things up. But what you don't see on Shark Tank is that, I read this somewhere. I think it's like 2 hours. That's like a 2-hour deal that's going on. It's a conversation that's occurring, and the producers just pick out the best, 5 or so minutes and plug that into the show. So there's a lot you're not seeing. And
there's a whole screening process anyway. Actually having, watched Shark Tank a number of times, and I know at one point, knowing someone who was kind of interested in pursuing that, they have a pretty rigorous application process. So you have to keep in mind, sometimes you watch and you see these people out there and you're like, I'm not sure if that's the greatest idea, but those are the people who've already made it through the initial rounds of screening, which you, like you said, you never see. And of course, it looks like, these wealthy investors are making these snap decisions, and that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Even on that show, that's not how it works. Even though it kind of looks like that's how it works.
Well, there's even a post show effort that goes on. If somebody could come on and tell them whatever they want to hear, and then so they kind of, the deals that are made on that show are sort of a handshake deal, a non-binding handshake deal, I guess I should say, because there's still opportunity for the sharks to really look at it in detail afterward and then say, hey, this is not at all what you pitched, and I'm out.
Right. Yeah. Not, oh yeah, you made a good sales pitch, but your numbers don't at all add up to that. So
yeah.
So,
so we're going to go into contents of a real pitch deck, and trust me, it's more than 5 slides. So before we do, though, let's invite you one more time to connect with us. You can find TrueChat on social media at TrueChat.org. That's TrueChat.org. Folks, this stuff is a whole lot more effective if you join the conversation and tell us your thoughts and your experiences, as well as things you'd like to hear us produce on this show. We'd love to hear from you and start that conversation. So let's get going on this one, because we do have a fairly lengthy laundry list here. We could probably probably talk about it for hours. We're not going to do that, but let's hit a couple of the first ones because they're really critical. We say over and over again on Business is Art, you got to have a vision. Everything starts with a vision. What's your vision for your business? It's got to be clear, concise, short, to the point, a sentence, maybe two, no more. But you got to have a vision, and it's a good idea to also have a mission statement. There's a difference. Vision is kind of how you see things out into the future. And mission is what you do. I'm Joe the plumber. I plumb, so,
I love it. I love it. That's a great mission statement. I mean, hey, right? It's clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Just get to the point what it is that you do, not why you do it. Purpose is why you do it. But vision and mission, you got to have, and vision, like I said, can be outward facing or inward facing. Outward facing means, hey, what's the impact of the world, of society to your customers because you are present and providing products and services? That's outward facing. It could be an inward facing vision, where do you see this company several years down the road? So there's no right or wrong unless you just don't do it at all, then that's wrong.
If you don't put it together, then it's incorrect.
Yeah. I don't know, Justin, I've been to several pitch competitions, either as a participant or as an observer or as a judge. And it is surprising how many entrepreneurs get up there and pitch and never mention their vision. And if the question comes up in the Q&A afterward, they really struggle for an answer. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of as a prospective investor, I think part of what you hopefully are trying to get a feel for is who are the people behind the business? Because as much as we all like the idea, right, of the hard numbers, the black and white, especially when you're investing, especially when it comes to money, the gray area is kind of frowned upon. The people are the very big gray area. And you kind of want to have an idea of what was your motivation for doing this? And usually, hopefully you're going to find that in the mission and vision, or at least part of it, is that passion component. Because if that's not there, a lot of times these things don't work, even if they're a good idea.
That's right. That's where the passion comes out. And you have to, even if you aren't feeling passionate in the moment, you have to act it. And hey, I'm a fairly seasoned veteran at giving presentations and pitches and things like that. But even I just 2 weeks ago was, making a business pitch. I had all my facts together. I had everything nailed down, but I was low energy that day. I just wasn't into it. And afterwards, that was one of the first comments that came out of the audience's mouth was, what you said made sense. You're on point, but man, you just didn't seem like you're excited about this at all. How can we get excited about it? I'm like, God damn it. You're right. So
yeah, well, it's the same thing. I mean, obviously some people are in positions where they have to do that stuff frequently, but here, when you go to be, recorded at TrueChat, that's always one of those, if your audience, regardless of, how they're listening, if your audience senses that you don't care or you don't care very much, it's always harder to sell it, than because people want to do things that other people are excited about. It's that group mentality. And if you're passionate about it, and when you talk about the mission statement, people feel, that this is important to you, it's certainly not going to hurt you, put it that way.
Right.
I mean, it usually will help, but at the very least, it's not going to hurt. Nobody's going to be like, oh, I was so mad how passionate they were about that business.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
There will be someone that may hate your business idea, but they'll say, well, you certainly are passionate about it.
Yeah. Well, you've seen that on Shark Tank, right?
Sure.
I mean, there's been times where none of them invest.
I admire your passion.
Yeah. And it's like, and that person's like, yep, I'm just going to keep on going and trying, even though you didn't offer me anything.
Yep.
So
exactly. Well, hey, we are 15 minutes into the podcast. We've only covered one of
we
many.
got to speed up.
So we're going to go through but I anticipated that. There's going to be a few we'll slow down and have some discussion. Others will just kind of rattle off. This next one I do want to have a little bit of discussion though, and it is one of the next key important upfront components of your pitch deck, and that is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? You've got to be clear and concise about that as well. And I'll share a little bit about my experience there, but first, Justin, I would like to know what your experience has been about sharing the industry problem that TrueChat tries to solve, and how effective has that been?
So the next several, or the next two here, industry problem and market opportunity, are both ones that emerging industry or businesses that are in an emerging industry often, I think, struggle the most with. Yeah. For the very reason that it's an emerging industry. One, articulating an industry problem for an industry that either doesn't exist or is, very new is certainly challenging, because it might be one of those things that when you tell people this is the problem we're fixing, they're going to say, well, we didn't know that was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, from TrueChat's standpoint, it's changed a few times. I guess put it this way, it's not changed how we solve the problem, but what we articulate the problem to be has changed.
Yeah.
As we've, had more clients and learned from them, what we're solving for them. In other words, we knew that this was something that people wanted, but why they wanted it was actually one of those things initially that was hard for us to figure out. Because there are a number of different ways that somebody can make use of a podcast. Mm-hmm. So I think articulating the problem has thankfully become relatively simple, which is that, one of two things. People are either looking to stand out. In other words, there's so much digital marketing you can do. But it's crowded. Everybody's doing it now. So what can you do that differentiates? We solve a problem of differentiation. And we also solve for people who've already, so forget they're trying to look to differentiate. Just for a minute here, they know they want to do a podcast, right? But that's easy to say. It's a whole other thing to do it and do it well and do it professionally. So we solve the problem of starting podcasts. From a professional standpoint. So it's definitely been a challenge, but I think realizing that sometimes the answer is simpler and we make it too complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a couple things what you said. First of all, you and I did not coordinate any answers whatsoever prior to this podcast. No. But you hit on the emerging market. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But if you've got a business or a product, let's say you've got a new bicycle seat design that absolutely no way, even for a beginner, is your butt going to hurt after taking a long bike ride. That's pretty easy to, people can identify to the problem. You can, you recognize it right away. Not much more to say. Hey, your butt won't hurt if you buy this bike seat. Yep. Great. Give me one.
Exactly.
Right.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good. But, emerging markets is a struggle. That's the struggle. That's exactly the struggle that I have with Plan Canvas. It's not a business planning tool. That's one of the first places people go, is a business? No, it's not. You can produce a business plan out of it, but that's not the point. The point is, do something with that damn plan,
That's right.
Execute to it and make something happen. Get some results. Well, as a strategy execution management tool, it is a tool, software in an emerging market. Strategy execution management tools is an emerging market. Most people don't grasp the concept. When you say the word strategy execution management, it sounds like hell, right? Strategy execution, what's that mean? So it is exceedingly difficult for me to find that punch that this is the problem. The problem, and let me give you an example. So, I put a pitch deck together at this guy is an investor type. He was not interested in investing. So it wasn't for those purposes, but he said, hey, as a favor, I see these decks all the time. Put one together, send it to me and I'll evaluate it and give you some feedback. So like, perfect. Great. So I did. And, that was right at the top of his list. I'd like to hear you talk more about what the problem is. Like, what the problem is? The problem is that, most businesses fail. Most strategies fail. They fail because they don't have a plan, to start with. If you look at any amount of research, a lack of a plan is always right up near the top, if not at the top. And if the plan does exist, it's too complex, it's not actionable, and there's no follow through. That's the problem. So quantify that problem. I don't know, it's billions of dollars, in the U.S. alone. How do you make that punch more, how's it received better? I still struggle with that. I've been struggling with that for 2 years now.
I laugh because I feel John's pain on this, because to those of us who have created whatever this thing is, whatever your business is, it's so obvious that it's so difficult to explain to other people when they ask that. It's like, what don't you get? It's like, what do you mean? What's the problem?
Yeah.
Cause you answered that question so long ago when you came up with this. I mean, that's the very reason that what you're doing exists, is because you figured this out. So to you, it's almost like, why do I need to, why am I being questioned about this?
Yeah.
And so it can be tough, to both overcome it and then to overcome it, like John said, in a way that actually means something to somebody else.
Right.
'Cause we may have the answer, but the answer is, most people look at you and they just gloss over, 'cause it's like, I don't know what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So always, the keep it simple, stupid thing, but it's so important because you are talking to investors who, obviously, a lot of what they spend their time doing is investing. So it's maybe not necessarily their area of expertise, the particular business you're in. So you can't expect them to understand it to the level that you do.
Yeah. Yep. So, but we'll get there. Speaking of getting there, we want all of you to get there. And, all of the podcasts at TrueChat really have a mission of getting you there. We want to inform and educate through respectful conversations like the one we're having right now. And, again, we want you to join the conversation. So go out and find us at TrueChat.org. That's TrueChat.org, and join the discussion if you would, please. Let's rattle off a few of these, before slowing down again, Justin. So, a few more things. So we've mentioned mission, statement, and vision statement. Be really clear and concise on the industry problem. You also want to talk about the market opportunity, even if you have to kind of make it up. You at least want to try to quantify it in some sort of reasonable form or fashion. Somebody, I see this all the time too. Pitch decks come out, or somebody's giving a pitch and they're like, "Oh, this is a $10 billion opportunity," and it's like, no, it's not. So be a little bit real.
And it's like, no, it's not. People make that mistake too. Just because it's not the next Google doesn't mean it's not a good idea.
That's right.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be, because that's what we all have fantasized, obviously, is, thinking that that's what the startup world is like, when in fact, obviously the vast majority, probably, 98%, 99% are nothing like that.
Yep.
And never will be. And that's okay.
Right.
Because they can still be really successful, and you can still have a good business, and you can still find investors.
Right.
Most startups are not that.
Right. Right. And here's what I think is a key here. When you're talking about market opportunity, don't just sling it. Don't just make it up. Like I said, if you have to, do, but try not to. In fact, try to quote other market research from reputable sources. According to Forbes, Blom. According to Inc., boom. According to Gartner, boom. Whoever your source is, but make sure you're quoting a reputable source so that it's not your opinion, it's some expert's analysis, and you're trying to fit into whatever market they've defined.
Yep. Yeah. Anytime you can bring in those outside resources, always.
Yep. All right. And most of that stuff is out there for free if you just take a little time and look for it. All right. Of course, you want to talk about what your solution is. If you've got something you can demo, you want to demo it. That's a challenge because, if you're talking about, a widget that you can hold up and flip a switch and that's the end of the demo, great. But when you're talking about things like software or podcasts or stuff like that, time limits are tough. But you want to, to the best of your ability, demo what you have. You want to talk about client traction. So, what kind of success have you had?
Hey, I got one for product demo.
Yeah.
Because I just did this. Because that's something that, like you mentioned, TrueChat's been struggling with, from when you're talking to somebody or even a prospective client. You can play a podcast for them, right? But it's like, okay, you can go listen to those for free. So that's not like a super impressive thing. So what we've started doing is, even though this is a small component of what we do, we take our new mobile recording units out just to show them.
Yeah.
So we don't take time to set it all up and show them how it all works. We just take it, open it up, and explain to them, here's how simple it is. just as a way to show them something physical. I think that gets underestimated too. I know we live in a digital world, but especially for digital companies, market research tells us across industries that when you can give something physical to someone, it always increases their perception of the value you have, the value they've received, because anytime something is not a tangible physical product, even if you have to give them, just like a printed whatever brochure or something, it's kind of almost better than absolutely nothing.
Right.
Because it makes it hard, especially for people like John and I who run businesses where the product really isn't a physical thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You may get this too, but I get this all the time from family and friends. Oh, you should try out for a Shark Tank. Like there is no way I would ever do that because first of all, I would never get on. And if I did, they'd eat me up because of exactly that. You can't show it. I have seen softwares and apps on Shark Tank occasionally. They don't come up very often. I think I've seen one maybe that somebody invested in, but they're hard for that investor unless that is their lane. If that, if that's what they do, they invest in software or media companies. All right, they get it. Anybody else, there's just not enough time in the day.
Yep.
So, all right. So, it goes back to know your audience, right? So we said client traction, talk about your competitors. There's no one out there that we compete with. Lie. That's a lie. You're lying to yourself. There are competitors, even if they don't do exactly what you do, they're competitors. So,
familiar with that struggle to those of you out there who have that same, there's nobody out there that does, but that doesn't mean you're not competing with them. I think that's the disconnect there, right? Is the idea that they may not do what you do, but it doesn't mean they're not competing for the same dollars.
Right. You're competing, but you have a differentiator. So that's the key.
That's the point.
Yep. All right. What do they get out of it? What's the customer get out of what you have? What's the benefit? So that's where you can tie in differentiators as well. Of course, you're going to want to do some revenue and financial projections. You want to be a little bit realistic. And here comes the next point to that. How do you make money? So many pitches are put together. Oh, we're going to, next year, we're only going to do about $100,000 this year, but next year it's going to be $100 million. Well, how is that going to happen? How do you make money? People stumble over that. What do you mean? How do I make? I'm just going to sell stuff. Yeah. So, right.
Right. Yeah. I'm just going to sell this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if it was that simple, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So, along with that, you've got to project your revenue growth. Financials doesn't simply mean sales and revenue, right? When you're doing your financial modeling, you've got to include your cost. That's your cost to produce whatever it is you're producing, cost to sell it, cost to manage the business. All of those costs have to go into your financial projections. But you also want to have a chart, preferably a chart that shows how much revenue you anticipate year over year, growing year over year. You also want to talk about something called churn rate. This is, now if you're selling cupcakes over the counter, churn rate probably doesn't mean a whole lot unless you've got, cupcake member clubs.
Right.
Right. So
otherwise you have a pretty high churn. You better have a pretty high churn rate.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But, if you're selling, subscription services, or listeners or whatever it is that you're selling, that's a lot more trackable. That is repeatable, recurring. You want those customers recurring. How long they stay with you, how often you turn over, how much of your time is spent hunting for new customers. That all is what churn rate means.
Very relevant.
Yep.
Like you said, though, only for certain types of businesses. So be keeping that. You don't want to throw it in there because the last thing you want as an investor to be like, why is that in there? So don't just stick it in just because some list tells you it ought to be in there.
Yeah, right. Company key performance indicators. How are you measuring success? This goes smack to what I'm always preaching about. And in fact is a big part of Plan Canvas. What are your KPIs? Do you know? There are multiple categories of KPIs. There's sales, there's financials, there's customer, there's employee, there's social responsibility, and there's operations. Rattled those off pretty quick, didn't I?
Yeah, that was good.
But you got to know, what are your key performance indicators? How are you measuring success as you define it for your business?
Company milestones kind of ties into that pretty nicely.
Yep. That is the next one, milestones. You've already achieved a lot of things. Brag about it, or at least make sure they know about it. Now, don't give painful details, but we were founded in June of 2013. In January of 2014, we produced our first beta test version of whatever it is that we're selling. So list those major milestones that have occurred over the last few months or last couple of years.
Yep.
And then list out what you would like to see occur into the future. Talk about your management team. If it's just you, great. Talk about yourself. Chances are, even if it's just you are a sole proprietor of a business or a sole partner in an LLC that you're starting up, you've probably got outsiders that you really consider part of your team and that really are part of your team. So list them as well. Make sure that folks know you're not operating in a vacuum.
Yeah, you got to be able to show that, at the very least, support team. Mm-hmm. Even if they're not day-to-day management, if you rely on them to help make decisions, you want to include them as long as they're an asset. And if they're not an asset, then maybe you should ask yourself if they should be helping you make decisions.
Right. All right, just a couple more to go, but here's a big one that is often overlooked. Reasons to invest. Why should your audience invest in what? Well, I just told them all this stuff. Well, yeah, you told them all this stuff, but you didn't yet give them the reason to invest. What are they going to get out of it? And tied to that is, what are you asking for? Mm-hmm. Right? What are you going to do with this money?
Yep. How much do you need? And truly, because that's the biggest one that I think we had struggled with out of all of this stuff, was the, what do you really need? Because there's that tendency when you're going to ask for money, it's like, well, I need anything you'll give me, but part of what a good investor probably wants to know is, how much total do you need? I'm not going to give it all to you.
Yeah.
That's just, I'm not going to give you all the money you need, but I want to know how much you need, because if you need this crazy insurmountable amount, then maybe I'm not going to give it to you, But if you need this big amount and you have a plan on how to get there, then maybe that changes things.
Yep.
It's very important, because you don't want to get blindsided by that question of, well, how much do you need? And you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this order is important as well.
Yes.
Don't say, here's what I need, here's why you should invest. Say, here's why you should invest in me. Get them excited about investing. Then say, now here's what I need. Now that you are excited, let me tell you what I need.
That's right.
And if you don't know exactly, that's okay. But estimate it. And don't stand up there and say, well, I think maybe it's about $500,000, but I don't really know. Don't do that.
At the very least, give them a range.
Yeah.
It's okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be a exact number, or you can give them a couple numbers and say, with this level, we can do X, and with this level, we can do Y.
Yeah.
That way they know at the very least that you've put time into thinking about how much you need and what it will let you do, and how you'll spend it.
Yeah.
Because they like to know about that. Like, for example, they want to know that their money is being used to grow the business, not pay off debt. So you got to make sure to at least articulate that you've taken time to think about that.
Yep. And kind of relative to that, just be confident, even if you really truly aren't. Whatever number you put out there, show that you're confident about it, and you can go be unsure of yourself on the drive home. But when you're in front of that group, be confident.
Yeah, people don't like to invest in shaky things.
Yeah. If you appear to be unclear or unsure, they are surely not going to invest.
Yeah.
Right.
I would not select a financial advisor who was like, well, I don't really know.
Right. Yep.
They have very strategic ways of saying that are much more reassuring.
Yep.
Or at least good ones do.
Right. Well, the last bit of information you want to make certain that you always include in your pitch deck is your contact information. Because, when you're there in front of them, that's great. Someone in the room probably has your contact information because you got the thing scheduled to begin with. But There's no guarantee that everyone in the room has your contact information. So make sure that it is front and center on the final slide in your pitch deck. This is how you get a hold of me. And include social media, include your phone number, include your website, include your email address. You don't have to put your home phone or your home address in there, but definitely your cell phone number. You want to make it as easy as possible for these people to contact you.
Yeah, it would be a shame if they wanted to invest but couldn't figure out how to get back with you.
Yeah.
So, and you don't know who, a lot of times you're providing a copy of this either in physical form or digital. Mm-hmm. They might send it to somebody else. And, if there's no contact info with it, somebody else might look at it and think, oh, that's a good idea. And then they might want to get involved, but they don't know how to reach you.
Well, that's exactly what happened in my case in this recent, the guy that requested a pitch deck just to review. He just wanted to give me some friendly feedback was all. And, once he did, I thanked him for it, said I would work on, incorporating, his suggestions and, really didn't expect to hear from him again. But about 2 hours later, he emailed me back. He said, I might know somebody that might be interested in this. This is kind of in their wheelhouse. Do you mind if I send your pitch deck to them? I'm like, no, I don't mind. Go for it. So, exactly to your point. I mean, that exactly happened to me just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So you just don't know where it's going to go.
That's right. And it's better to have it and not need it than to not have it in there
Yeah.
and miss an opportunity.
Yeah.
Especially when you've already put in all this work. It's not a lot of work to add your contact info.
Yep. All right. Well, hey, we talked pretty fast. There was a lot of ground we wanted to cover. We slowed down on the big points. I'll just read this list to you here real quick in summary before we close out. So, table of contents for your pitch deck, mission statement and vision statement, industry problem, market opportunity, your solution, product demo if applicable, client traction, competitors, customer benefits, revenue and financial projections, how you make money, revenue and growth rate year over year, churn rate, company KPIs or key performance indicators, company milestones, your team, reasons to invest, funding round, how much, what you're going to do with it, and contact information. So there is a set of things to really think about having in your pitch deck. And again, those 5-minute pitch competitions, you can't possibly cover all of this stuff in any amount of detail. So what we're talking about here is a much more extended version of a pitch deck, much more detail. All right. Well, thanks, Justin. Appreciate you sitting in and having the conversation.
Always. Hopefully we gave people some useful info.
I hope so too. And if not, well, maybe they'll tune into the next episode of Business is Art where we will give them some useful information.
There's a lot of them out there, right? There's a great catalog of resources.
There's a little something for everyone.
That's right. If you can't find something in the 153 episodes or something now,
yeah,
that's useful to you, then we're sorry.
We're sorry. We're very, very sorry. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Justin. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Business is Art. Be the change.